The snow falls in a relentless, silent curtain, muffling the world in white. Each breath hangs in the air, a fleeting cloud of steam. Through the skeletal trees, a figure moves with a desperate, hurried gait. His clothes are a patchwork of wool and leather, darkened by damp and dirt. He is being hunted, not by beasts, but by men with dogs and steel. Every snapped twig underfoot sounds like a thunderclap to his ears. The forest, once his ally, is now a maze of frozen branches and deep snowdrifts. He is an outlaw, and this winter could be his last. This is not a tale of adventure, but of survival against overwhelming odds. How did outlaws survive when the world itself seemed determined to freeze or starve them? We'll explore the forgotten skills that kept them alive. These were not skills of heroism, but of necessity, honed by the constant threat of death. It is a story of how to disappear, endure and live when society has cast you out. For an outlaw, the choice between the town and the forest was no choice at all. Towns were traps, walls, gates, and watchful eyes everywhere. The law's reach was absolute, and a stranger was always suspect. The forest, by contrast, offered a sprawling, chaotic sanctuary. The great woods of medieval England were vast and untamed, feared by most. For an outlaw, that fear was a shield. Dense undergrowth and confusing trails made pursuit difficult. Here a person could vanish. But the forest was no paradise. It offered no warm beds or easy meals. The real enemies were exposure, starvation, and sickness. A simple fall or an infected cut could be fatal. The greatest challenge was not outrunning the sheriff, but outlasting the relentless pressure of survival. Outlaws traded the certain danger of the town for the uncertain sanctuary of the wild. The forest became their home, hunting ground, and for most their final resting place. It was a harsh bargain, but the only one available. The romantic image of the outlaw, a dashing hero, a champion of the poor, is a powerful myth. In reality, being declared outside the law was terrifying. Anyone could harm or kill you without consequence. You were a wolf's head, hunted for bounty. Most outlaws were not noble rebels, but ordinary people pushed to the edge by poverty or injustice. A farmer fleeing debt, a poacher feeding his family, or someone escaping a harsh sentence, these were the true outlaws. Their crimes were often born of desperation, stealing bread, cutting wood, or failing to perform forced labour. For women, exile could come from social shame or false accusation. They did not seek adventure, only survival. Their knowledge of the land came from a lifetime of necessity, not training. They knew which plants were edible, how animals behaved, and how to endure. Their survival was based on humble, practical wisdom, not heroic feats. For the winter outlaw, shelter was the first and most critical priority. The lucky found caves or rock overhangs, immediate, sturdy protection. More often they built pit houses, shallow pits dug into a slope, roofed with branches, covered in turf and snow for insulation. From a distance a well-made pit house was nearly invisible. Another option was the bender, a dome of bent saplings, thatched with bracken, reeds or moss. The low curve shape shed wind and snow and was easier to keep warm. Placement was strategic, far from paths, near water and firewood, with disguised entrances. Approaching shelters by winding routes avoided leaving tracks. These humble dwellings, holes in the ground or huts of woven branches, were fragile fortresses against man and nature. Survival began with a hidden, insulated home. Fire was life, but also a deadly risk. An open flame could betray an outlaw's location, so fires had to be small, efficient, and secret. The Dakota fire hole was ingenious. 2 connected holes, one for the fire, one for air intake, producing little smoke and hiding the light. Dry, seasoned fuel was essential. Wet wood meant smoke and danger. Outlaws gathered deadwood from sheltered spots and stored it dry. Flint and steel were used to spark fires, with charcloth or dry fungus as tinder. Every spark was precious in the damp winter forest. The ability to create and manage a hidden fire meant warmth, food, and hope. It was a fundamental pillar of survival. A secret fire allowed them to stay warm, cook, and hold back the darkness. Without it, the cold would win. Fire was both a tool and a test of skill. In winter, it was the wet cold that killed. Damp clothing robbed the body of heat. Hypothermia was a constant threat. Outlaws adapted their clothing with what they had, wool for insulation, but not waterproof. Animal fats or beeswax were rubbed into leather and cloth to repel water. Layering was key thin layers, trapped warm air, and dry grass or moss added insulation. Hands and feet were most vulnerable. Foot wraps of leather or cloth stuffed with moss helped stave off frostbite. Drying clothes by a hidden fire was a rare luxury. These adaptations were not elegant, but they worked. Staying dry and warm was a daily battle. The smallest details could mean the difference between life and death. Food was scarce in the winter forest. Hunting was dangerous and difficult. Large game was rare and risky. Survival depended on stored foods and deep knowledge of what remained edible. Nuts gathered in autumn, especially acorns, were vital, processed to remove bitterness, then cooked into porridge or bread. Foraging meant searching for overwintering leaves, digging for roots and tubers, or scraping edible bark from trees. Small game was caught with silent snares and traps, rabbits, squirrels, birds. Every catch was a victory, providing meat, fat, sinew, and bone. The diet was monotonous and meagre, but it kept them alive. Outlaws learned to see food where others saw nothing. The winter larder was a test of ingenuity and endurance. Each meal was hard-won. Survival was a constant grueling search for enough energy to see another day. The stories often end with the outlaw escaping, but reality was far harsher. The greatest threats were not the sheriff's men, but disease, malnutrition, and exposure. The cold, damp, and lack of food wore the body down. A cough could become fatal pneumonia. Many outlaws died alone, their bodies found only when the snow melted. Survival skills were not legendary arts, but desperate measures. The Dakota fire hole, the pit house, the knowledge of edible plants, These were the thin line between life and death. Most did not survive their first winter. Their story is not one of glory, but of endurance. They were ordinary people facing extraordinary hardship. Their ingenuity and connection to the land allowed them to endure what few could imagine. For much of history, survival itself was the greatest achievement.